Now, welcome into the second part of the show. We edited some of that interview with John Halligan from last night, tried to make it fit in as much as possible, and we left in, I suppose, the main bits. I know it ran a bit long. It's very rare to do an interview that would run or take up the full hour of the show, but we decided, myself and Julie, as per Julie's producer, that I think it's worth it. He's a person that has been in politics in Waterford for so many years. He is a current Minister of State. He's been in the government, and a lot of people had and wanted to know about his reasons for not going again. People texting in saying even if he ran again, he wouldn't have got elected. We don't know that. We just don't know that. He spoke about his love with Elaine, and he spoke about the problems that she's had. And as you heard him say, Elaine suffered a fractured back. Her spine has been fractured in that fall that recently. So we want to wish Elaine very well in the future, and wish John the very best as well. And I want to thank him for coming in. As I said, that was he decided to do an interview with us instead of doing RTE or News Talk, and did it first with us. He may well do interviews later on today or tomorrow, but we got through quite a lot in that interview, and I want to thank all the people for texting in. I'm going to read out some of the texts. Hello, Damien. This is from David Cullinan. I want to wish John Halligan the very best in his retirement. He gave 40 years of solid political activism and representation. I wish John, his wife Elaine and his family all the best of luck and good fortune. Lynn has texted in, John Halligan knows he would not have been re-elected. He made a solemn promise to deliver 24/7 cardiac cover for the South East within 18 months and said he would resign if it were not delivered by government. Another texter, best of luck in your retirement, John. You did your best for Waterford. You never forgot your roots. Looking at the texts that are coming in, I can safely say that they're 50-50 in terms of those that are saying he did a good job and those that are saying he didn't do enough. Pat has texted in, Damien, would like to take this opportunity to thank John for all his help to me and my family over the last 30 years. A decent and honest man whom always would have a word for you and always put Waterford first. Would like to wish John Elaine all the best in the future. Kind regards, Pat. If you do want to text or WhatsApp, 083 3333 975, or you can call Audrey on 051 846 123. Eddie did that. He called Audrey and he said that John Halligan did break a promise. He said he would take down the government if they didn't deliver 24/7 cardiac care. He'd like to wish John all the best. Another person, I think this is John, that may have texted or phoned in. John Halligan travelled to Kazan to support the World Skills Irish team last year, and from all the feedback, his efforts were appreciated by all the parents and participants. And his opinion that our media and press fall far short of Ireland's achievement is correct. Ireland is ranked 10th. Joe says that John Halligan went back on his word when he asked Joe Kelly to stand for election, and he would back him, and that didn't happen. We have a text in from Joe Kelly as well, Councillor Joe Kelly. I'll read that out in a second. We don't know if Joe Kelly is going to declare himself yet. Hello, Damien. People would need to know the human side of John Halligan. I witnessed John visit a friend of mine in the Department of Psychiatry who was severely ill. This person was homeless, and John Halligan was the guy who helped and pointed me in the right direction in trying to secure safe accommodation, and he stayed in touch with the young man ever since. And that is from Brian. John Halligan has served over 50 years in Waterford in various capacities at local and national level, says his texter. He has been unfailing in his commitment to the Deise and has made a real difference to many families here in Waterford. He deserves our gratitude and respect. I, for one, am sorry to see him go, but wish him well in his retirement. Another person, Jim, says, why would you have John Halligan on the show? I don't believe him, says Jim, and I've experience of him. Another person, Damien, John Halligan has left the people of Waterford high and dry after voting for him for years. There's still no 24/7 cardiac care in Waterford, and I'm not even going to start on the airport. He's got his pension and off to space like a space cowboy. John Halligan has, as you heard him say, he says it's going to come, says the airport's going to come, says the jets will be there. Damien, just like to thank John Halligan for all the help he gave me and my family over the years, and want to wish him the very best. And Bernie has said, I want to wish John and his family the very best. Another person has texted in, we've heard all this before. John is blah, blah, blah. Another person, Damien, John Halligan has done well for Waterford. I think it was an uphill battle against Joe. Oh, this is Joe Kelly. I think it was an uphill battle against Fine Gael and the HSE to fight for 24/7 care. On the overall record, he's done well. That's from Councillor Joe Kelly. Damien, he would never have got back in again over 24/7 and false promises. Jim Grant says, I'd like to wish John the very best in the future. I've known John a long time, as we say in Waterford, a sound man. I can't believe what John is saying, says another texter. He wants people to work at weekends, nurses and doctors on different shifts. Why don't they put politicians on shift work? And this person is a 3-shift worker himself. Pat Kennedy says, I can't believe John, a socialist, is proclaiming a right-wing leader of a right-wing party. Mary Butler TD texted, best of luck to John and Elaine in his retirement from politics for the next chapter in his life. Thanks for all the cooperation from John and his staff over the past 4 years. James in the city says, I think John Halligan is a true gentleman. I only saw him at the park at the weekend. I think it's unfair to judge a person until you walk in their shoes and try to do their job. There's a lot of expectation from negative people. Rome wasn't built in a day. I want to thank John for helping me get my home and wish him and his family all the best. Damien, great interview with John Halligan. I hope whoever replaces him in government is as hard working for Waterford. Credit where credit is due. Another person says, John Halligan loves the sound of his own voice. Another person, Damien, I voted for John Halligan last time. As far as I'm concerned, he didn't do what he told us he would do. He didn't walk out of government. Instead, he cosied up the Fine Gael. And it's the electorate who voted for him that he failed miserably. As for John Deise, I think all you need to do is ask the people of Dungarvan. Other people say, we'll miss John Halligan greatly, a great personality, says Helen. Keep your texts and comments coming in. We'll read out more of them in a little while. Firstly, I'm going to go to Anita Furlong. I'm going to change the subject slightly, but it is, a political issue as well as a social issue and a moral issue. It's the issue of chastity in teenagers. Would you encourage chastity in teenagers? There was due to be this talk by Jason Everett this week in Waterford, taking place tonight. It's been cancelled now, and a lot of discussions about it. And Anita Furlong is from Oakleaf Counselling. Anita, good morning. Anita Furlong, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
Thank you for coming in to us. Oakleaf Counselling.
That's right.
You counsel young people, you counsel adults about issues they may have had or may have in their personal lives. Could be to do with sexuality, could be to do with mental health issues, emotional disturbances, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
You contacted us in light of the planned talk that was due to be given by American speaker Jason Everett, organised by the Catholic Diocese of Waterford and Lismore. It's been cancelled now, and his event, another event he was due to take place, has also been cancelled. He's got a flu, it seems. What was your reaction when you heard he was due to come over and that he was due to talk, and when you did a bit of research into what he was espousing?
I was honestly quite shocked that this is being taught in our schools. And I do understand that he has been brought over strictly from a religious viewpoint. It is very much a Catholic ethos that he is coming in under. But nonetheless, that's not everybody in school. And as well, there is an awareness that that Catholic ethos, that abstinence model that this man espouses really doesn't work. It doesn't help. And it can actually compound issues and problems with young adolescents in around sexuality. OK,
we'll talk about the abstinence issue in a minute. Firstly, in terms of gay and lesbian community, LGBT plus society and people, he, in his writings, has spoken about it being a disordered, I suppose, way of life. The language that he uses, he's obviously trying to be quite careful, and yet he's couching it in such a way as to indicate that it's not natural.
Yeah, I think it's, in fairness, in most of the world, and certainly in our part of the world, it's no longer acceptable to indulge in what could only be called hate speech, which is to criticise somebody for their sexual orientation, which is just a natural part of themselves. It's no longer acceptable to come out and say that that's wrong.
Would you go that far as say that that would be hate speech?
Yes, definitely.
Why?
Because when it comes to organisations, shall we say, like the church, and when you look at sexual orientation, if you look back through, really it's only the last 100 years, but look at the people who lay down the laws and the rules around it. You're looking at religion, law and medicine, which are three of the most influential bodies out there, the things that we look to for advice. That's where the experts are. That's who we go when we talk to. So what they say about something carries huge weight. And if they are speaking of something as being wrong, people will believe it. If they are speaking of something as being unnatural or discriminating against it in a legal sense, people will believe that. They won't question, because that is the influence those bodies or organisations have.
And yet, bodies such as the Catholic Church are fully entitled to put out their views. They would obviously deny any allegation or any insinuation that it is hate speech. Mm-hmm. They would say that it's one man's opinion and that he is entitled to that opinion. He's entitled to make that opinion. We live in a country of free speech, and yet there are laws, obviously, that if there are issues that can be brought up. But some people within the Catholic Church and in other religions in the Catholic Church would feel that there's a increased secularisation of society and effectively a war against the Church.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's almost part of our nature when we get into arguments, we polarise very, very quickly. So it's either an absolute yes or an absolute no. It's a for and against. The reality is that anybody who follows a religion, they should follow their codes, what they believe in, the rules, the laws, whatever it is. But where it's problematic is if that then discriminates against a section of society, or if it's being forced on people who don't agree with it, or if it's being used as a means to bully people or shame people, then it's problematic.
Again, the Catholic Church would say there was nothing going to be forced regarding Jason Everett's talk. Schools would have come, maybe of their own volition, we don't know. People would have been entitled just to come of their own if they wanted.
Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps there the Catholic Church is paying down the influence that it has on people, the influence it has on institutions, the influence it has on individuals, perhaps on parents who are looking at adolescents, on teachers, on principals. How much pressure is there to conform? And just the very fact that they say something has influence.
The idea of abstinence, this is the abstinence model that Jason Everett would be espousing, and that he was saying that for any kind of teenagers, that to abstain from sexual relationships up to a certain age, but even beyond, is a good thing. And he's saying it helps us become more in tune with God, with oneself, with your inner feelings, and that it takes away this idea of having a kind of a hedonistic approach to life. Mm-hmm. Why do you say that message is dangerous?
It's dangerous if it depends on the way it's put across. I'll put it that first. There is no doubt if there was complete abstinence, there would be no unwanted pregnancy, there would be no sexually transmitted diseases. But the reality is, and research, now most of this research comes from the US because that's where that model is most prevalent currently. And it has been shown that even among adolescents who have pledged, as they call it over there, to the abstinence model, 60% nonetheless are not abstinent. They do have sex.
Where does that research come from?
That research is from the Journal of Adolescent Mental Health, and I can provide you with a link to that if you want to look it up further, if anybody else would like to read up a bit further on it. So really, people talk about both sides of an argument. So really, if you're going to espouse an abstinence model, it should go hand in hand with sexual education. It should go hand in hand with knowledge on sexually transmitted diseases, contraception, consent models. It should go hand in hand with knowing. All of the sexual education should be there, as well as education on abstinence. Then people can make an informed choice. There is absolutely nothing wrong with choosing abstinence, but know why they're doing it.
What about the argument that if you talk about these type of things, people are more likely to engage in them? If you talk about sex, they're more likely to have sex.
Well, the reality is that, again, if you look at the research in around sex education, where there is robust sex education, that includes information on contraception and sexual health. There is a far lower incidence of sexually transmitted infections and a far lower incidence of unwanted pregnancy. So education is the piece.
The language that is used by Jason, usually it's couched in love and understanding, as you say. Can abstinence lead to internalised shame, and this combination of abstinence with the message of gays and lesbians being disordered?
Mm-hmm. I think it can very much, and I think in that it also that shame reaches outside the LGBT community or people who are questioning sexual orientation. Sex is something that is natural to most of us. And it's not. There are people who are asexual, and that is a normal orientation as well. But for most of us, we will be sexually active in our lives. So therefore, the more we know about it, the better. If we're told this is something you don't talk about, you avoid, you're given the idea there is something wrong with this. That builds up to ideas of shame within yourself. And that becomes very, very confusing. You know, that can lead to an awful lot of problems. It can lead to an awful lot of difficulty in later life, even in a marriage, having a healthy sex life, which is a very important part of any relationship. And it leads people to quite often hide and perhaps be afraid of intimacy. Afraid to show vulnerability in front of people, shame about themselves and their bodies and their desires. So unless it comes with the complete sex education side by side, it actually does more harm than good.
The LGBTQ plus community, there were plans for protests if he had been speaking in Waterford. Would you have protested yourself?
I would have. Yeah, I most definitely would have, because personally I believe that this, putting this out to children without giving them, and they are children, without giving them the sex education that needs to go with it, putting them in a situation where they actually don't have an informed choice. They don't make an informed choice, or parents don't get to make an informed choice around it. Yes, definitely.
Do you believe he should have been entitled to speak if he wanted to speak?
If he wanted to speak, but again, I think it should have been made very clear what this was about and who he was, where he was coming from with it, and that choices be given.
If Jason Everett rang up this station, rang up you and said, Anita, I'll debate with you publicly in a public forum the points that you're making, and I'll counteract them with my points, would you engage in that debate?
Well, I'm hesitant to engage in that type of debate anyway, quite honestly. I do believe that you can put forward your points. I think we can go around and around and around in circles, and just when you have two opposite, perhaps you could say opinions, but for me, when I debate something, I like to come from a point where I have researched it, I have looked at, and there is empirical research there to back it up. And the viewpoints that I'm putting forward here today, there is. So therefore, for that, I can stand confidently behind it. I have no doubts. There are areas I don't know much about, and that part would be, say, religious belief. And people do have a choice if they are part of a religion. They get to choose themselves what they do. But a religion doesn't get to choose to, or doesn't get to force that on other people.
Anita Furlong, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Anita. Any of your texts and comments, please text in 083 3333 975, text or WhatsApp. I want to give a special mention before I forget it to the Bohemians FC under-18 schoolgirl player Mia Lenihan, who will be playing for Waterford in the Under-17 League. She's going to be playing with Carlow Kilkenny in the League of Ireland from the end of the month. She's the first schoolgirl player from Bowes to make it into the League of Ireland grade. Well done to Mia, and the very best of luck to you. Now I'm going to read out more of your texts and comments regarding John Halligan in a few minutes. Stephen texted into the WhatsApp. Damien, I like John Halligan as a person he comes across as saying it like he sees it. As a politician, I personally think he tried. We'll never know would he have got in again, and maybe yes, maybe no. On the cardiac issue, yes, it's disgusting there's no 24/7 for Waterford, but if he'd walked out I guarantee people would have had something else to say. Better he was there than nobody representing Waterford. I want to wish him well, says Stephen. And thank you, Damien. That was an excellent interview. Thank you, Stephen, for your text. Damien, we're going to miss John Halligan greatly. A great personality, says Helen. Damien, that was a right old loving you had with John Halligan. Damien, I have you on in the radio in the kitchen. Father Ray Kelly singing Christmas songs in the sitting room. I can't decide who to leave. LOL. Well, I'll tell you now, if you want to stay with us, because we are going to be talking, if you're in your 40s, is 47, 48 the worst age of all? That's really what global studies just revealed. It's a funny confession, but poignant. 47 is the worst age of all. Would you agree? Stay with us. Now, I'm going to be going to Bernadette Ryan in a second. Firstly, John Halligan doesn't know what his pension is. Ah, come on, Damien. This can't be true. You know what you were getting from RTE. Why can't a politician answer a straight question with a straight answer? And also the idea that he has two drivers. Surely he knows how much he's going to retire on. Best of luck, John Halligan and Elaine, in the future. I hope you enjoy your retirement. That's from Councillor John Hearn. Best of luck, John. You did your best. You've achieved lots for this county, said this other texter. Any person who criticised him in his efforts, well, actions speak louder than words. Get into politics. Liam and Helen Sprice would like to wish John all the best in his retirement and thank him for all his help over the years. John has been an amazing advocate, said this texter to Waterford City. You should have been proud of your achievements, John, and hold your head up high. Another person saying, well, John said he would take 24/7 for Waterford, and on that remit he would support the government and accept a junior ministership. That was a lie. The only outcome is now that the people who voted for him will have to vote for somebody else, and he has his ministerial pension. Damien, you don't know what you have until it's gone. Waterford will be a loss without him. Keep your texts and comments coming in. Bernadette Ryan, good morning.
Good morning, Damien, and Happy New Year to you.
And many happy returns to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, very well.
Do you get the January blues, or have you methods to overcome them?
Well, I spent a lovely week in West Cork last week, so that kind of helped.
That does help, certainly does. 47 is really the worst age of all. Possibly 48, says some of the surveys. These are surveys, and fairly comprehensive surveys. One is done by scientists at the American National Bureau of Economic Research, claim to have established that in the developed world, human misery peaks at the age of 47, to be precise, 47.2.
Indeed.
What do you think of this idea, the midlife crisis, the mid-40s crisis? We get more miserable until we hit 48 and then we get happier. Is there any truth in this?
Well, yes and no, I suppose. Really, I suppose, at any age, happiness is an inside job, right? So, nothing outside of us is really going to make us happy. It might make us fleetingly so. But the first half of life, between Freud and Jung, for example, Freud said the first half of life, which is back then was about 37. It's probably stretched to about 47 point whatever it is now, was about building up, one's life, building up the ego, establishing a career, establishing life goals, chasing all those dreams, And then Jung said that the second half of life was about dismantling all of that and finding meaning sort of more or less on the inside. So I think, particularly, they say it starts to wane, happiness starts to wane from age 16 up to about 47.8. But, in that time, people are trying to establish a career, they're chasing jobs, they may start families, they have children, they have a mortgage. So it seems to be the constant treadmill, trying to reach, trying to gain, trying to get something outside of oneself. And I think there's a lot of fear and more so anxiety around that. Like the difference between fear is something useful to us. Fear tells us when we're in danger. Anxiety is more free-floating. It's fearful and worrying about something that might happen in the future. And I think a lot of people at that, they tend to worry. Parents tend to worry, are we getting it right with our kids? Are we sending them to the right school? Are we doing the right thing? All of those kinds of things are very anxiety-provoking. And when it comes to around midlife, the things that have even fleetingly made us happy, the new car or the new whatever, it kind of doesn't work anymore. And people tend to get that sense of what's it all about, And for many people, that can be about turning inwards and about finding the meaning of one's own life. Now some people, turn to various different outside of themselves, religion maybe, or, time in the Himalayas or whatever it is, and that's all very well and good, but it's about finding the meaning for oneself.
Yeah, because They talk about a thing called life weariness, and that a lot of middle-aged men and women are tempted to go off and do these mad things, go off to India or go and have an affair or go and buy a motorbike or get tattoos and stuff like that. But then there's others that just don't do that. They kind of maybe wallow a little bit and they just are asking the questions, is that it?
Is that it? And that's, you know, it is also around the existential angst, you know, up to, you know, the late 40s, the early 50s, perhaps we're so busy on the treadmill that we don't stop and think about that. For some people, they do find a way to hold that aspect of life for them. But it just can become, you know, sort of like that, you know, tired of life. And it really is about, and you know, the buying the new motorbike or even having the affair or all of those kinds of things, they're more reflective of running away from having to face ourselves, to face our mortality, because it's something we don't really like to think about. But we are living longer, and it's about, as Jung said, the second half of life was about making meaning, about individuation, you know, which is different to individualism, by the way. You know, it's about expanding our consciousness of who we are, why we're here, what is meaningful in our lives. And that doesn't have to be extraordinary. That can be and is often found in the ordinary. In fact, most people who are happy at any age tend to be very accepting of what is. We can be very unhappy by constantly not accepting the reality of our situation, which doesn't mean we don't try to change things if we're really miserable. But it's more about the unhappiness comes with, it shouldn't be like this. It should be like that. I should have what that person has, or I should have. So it tends to make us very unhappy, whereas at sort of after the late 40s, we do tend to become more accepting. You know, the big question, is this it? Well, yeah, it is.
Bernadette, thanks for joining us. Lovely to talk to you again.
Take care.
Great to talk to you there. Thank you. Yes, be happy. Bernadette Ryan there, relationship counsellor on how to be happy. Sean has texted in, 46 years old. It's years since I've been happy, says Sean. Other people texting in about the issues we've covered so far. Ronnie O'Connor. Anybody's in around Waterford City, no Fieldmaster down on the quay. They have this little puppet hitting it's a Charlie Chaplin figure, I think. So Ronnie has texted, he hits his cane against the window. Looking forward to see John Halligan back down in the window of Fieldmaster on the quay. All the best, John, from Ronnie O'Connor. Damien, we're turning into a communist state, right or wrong. We're all entitled to free speech. In this country, Irish men and women died for free speech. That's in from Barry. Noel says, Damien, best of luck to John. It takes a brave man to go into government. The only thing I'd say in his interview is his claim that he's only going to get around 15,000 of what he called redundancy. I don't agree with this. A councillor who's been on a council for 8 years got over 25,000. So I'd advise you to do the same as you did with Matt Shanahan and check exactly what his entitlements are. It could be close to 100,000. That's in from Noel. Noel, we will check that out. Welcome back to the programme. Thank you for all your texts and comments as ever. 083 3333 975. You can call Audrey on 051 846 123. Dermot phoned in to say John Halligan was never going to please everyone. He poured his heart and soul out for Waterford and he did his best. Angela rang in to say she wants to send her best wishes to John Halligan for the future. She says there's lots of people out there with nasty comments. No one deserves that kind of treatment. An important thing to read out as well from the WLR News and Current Affairs team. We will be covering this election as ever in a comprehensive, fair and balanced manner. We're going to be holding special election debates and going on the canvas trail with candidates to discover the issues that matter to you. In order to do this, we're going to be asking all candidates who are standing in the election in Waterford and or their campaign managers to contact us as soon as possible. So we've set up a special email address for the election. It's just very simply called election@wlrfm.com. So if there's any candidates out there that haven't, I suppose, contacted WLR yet in terms of coverage over the coming 3 weeks, we'd ask you to email us election@wlrfm.com. In a few minutes, I'm going to be talking to Neil Rooney, who is involved with the registration, the county registrar. And we're going to be talking about the electoral register. People have been texting and want to know about this because it's a major issue. If you have turned 18 recently, particularly since we'd say November, if you've moved house, if you've moved to the country. Let's say, for example, a loved one has died. They might still be on the register. You want to take their name off the register because it can be upsetting for people to get letters in the post saying somebody's entitled to vote and they've died. So we're going to be talking to Neil Rooney all about that. And it's very important, the distinction between what Neil Rooney does. He's involved in the courts service in Waterford and the council. It's actually the council that organise and oversee the implementation not only of the register of electors but also of the voting and the procedures as it happens on the day. So it's the council that are involved with that. Josephine has texted in, Damien, brilliant interview with John Halligan. He gave politics his life and worked so hard for us all. Please let WLR investigate and instigate some kind of debate about accountability for keyboard warriors and some of the vicious comments that have been put out on Facebook, not just now, but lots of different times. We need slander cases to be implemented to stop this horrible behaviour. Thanks, Josephine. And you heard John Halligan talk about that in the interview and the abuse that he and many other politicians have suffered. And Paddy Coffey also spoke about that before. Is it going to stop people getting into politics? Are there people out there that would like maybe to run for election and they just think, no, just can't take that kind of abuse? And then when does abuse become one step too far? For example, we heard about a crown of thorns being sent to his office in the Dáil. We heard about contact was made by a certain man who was saying he was going to put something underneath his car, potentially an explosive device, and that was investigated by the Gardaí. So when does it go too far? Is it a tough life for politicians out there? Or if you put yourself out there, are you supposed to take it? Let us know what you think. 083 3333 975. Another texter, Damien, will the John Halligan interview be found on the WLR website to hear during the day? I missed the first half of the show. I always find him an interesting fellow to listen to, as he gives me a laugh with some of the things he says. Yes, the interview will be podcast fully. Julie is doing that at the minute, and it'll be podcast later on the day on the WLR website. Now, in a minute, I'm going to be talking to Neil Rooney about the electoral register and what people need to do to make sure they can vote in the general election. A few more texts. Joe has texted from Belvedere Manor. So grateful for all John has done for people of Waterford under the radar. He's helped so many people. It's so sad to see how vicious the keyboard warriors have been. And John tries so hard to bring great changes to Waterford. Best wishes to himself and Elaine. Damien, I'd like to wish John all the best in the future. It's such a shame 24/7 will take longer. Unfortunately, John won't be remembered other stuff that he brought to the city. I've known him for nearly 20 years. I've always found him that he wants to do the best, and that is from D in the city. Damien, John Halligan walked himself into hot water when he told us if the cardiac issue didn't come about, he'd resign. Nothing has changed. He didn't go, and not from this man. Good luck to John in his retirement, but his distortion of the socialist idea is shameful. It must come from the Stalinist tradition, says this texter. Another texter, never heard John talk so much waffle. He didn't do too much for the unemployed and the old age pensioners in Waterford, says this texter. Another one saying, John, I want to wish you the very best and thank you for all the work you've done. That is from Anya. Now, Neil Rooney, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well and busy. Very,
very busy. How many staff have you working there? I suppose you're up to your eyes at present. What is the situation regarding the electoral register at present?
People entitled to vote in the election on the 8th of February, in the general election for the constituency of Waterford, which is basically the same as the other constituencies, are people who are on the current register. Current register expires at the end of the 14th of February and the new register comes in on the 15th. So it's only people who are on the current register. Now, it's Irish citizens and also English citizens who are resident here, and they have a D in front of their name on the register. The letter D for doctor in front of their name. Now, the issue which obviously is of concern is the fact that a lot of people will have gone on the register for the first time for next year, which starts on the 15th of February. That's the new year. A lot of people would have gone on in September, October, etc., up to Christmas, would have applied to go on that register. They will not be on the old register, which is the one we're working on now. The only way that can happen is if they go back and get a form and apply to go on the supplement to the register. Now, that is a form that has to be filled out. You can get it in City Hall. It has to be filled out and it's to be sworn before the Garda and given to City Hall. And that must be done before the close of business on the 22nd of January, which is, let me see, it's Wednesday of next week. So that's a very tight time scale, very, very, very tight. So in other words, if you're a person who became 18 sometime between September and Christmas, and you applied to go on the register, you will go on the register for it commences on the 15th of February. That's no good to you on the 8th of February, so you will have to reapply. Likewise, for example, if you changed address, you moved from Waterford to Dunmore East, it won't change until the 15th of February unless you go and apply to go on through the supplement to the register, and you must do that with that form to be sworn before the Gardaí before the 22nd of January.
Okay. Now, is that form available both in City Hall and in Dungarvan, or is it available online?
It probably is available online. I can't answer that because I'm not the registration authority, but it would be certainly available from the council offices.
From the council offices,
now,
yes.
So that you'd have them in Waterford and Dungarvan. It's probably available online, but I can't answer that for you. That's a matter of, they're the registration authority, not me.
Yeah, we had a text in yesterday from somebody to say that, is it the RF2 form or something it's called?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, we had somebody...
But it's the application for the supplement, it's very straightforward.
Yes, very straightforward, yeah. Somebody texted in yesterday to say it was available online. So let's say if somebody wanted to download it online, you still have to go to a Garda station or get a guard
You do, yeah. They'll have to sign off on it and stamp it with the Garda stamp.
Ah, okay. Now that's very important because some people might think, I'll just go into City Hall or to the council offices on next Wednesday.
But the whole point is, the Gardaí would ask for identification and so on to prove that they are the person they say they are. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
That's very important.
And do you find young people may not have registered? Have they thought about it? Some young people would have, but is there a tranche of people that think they automatically, when they hit 18, go on the electoral register?
Well, I'd put it this way. The law is clear. It's up to the individual to get themselves on the register. I think that's something that probably will change. But I think registration needs to be compulsory, and that's something I think when the new electoral commission comes into being will probably be addressed and will be done on the PPS number, so that you can't be registered twice. If you're registered in Galway, you can't be registered in Waterford. But if you change address, you apply to change to the other register, and it is possible. But I mean, there's been so many sort of referenda in the last few years. I think the public are well aware that they have to be registered on the electoral register if you want to vote. And there's a lot of advertisements given by government that put out very regularly on the paper, very regularly on the radio, very regularly on the television, etc. So if people aren't aware, I'm a bit surprised.
And let's say there's listeners to this programme today and they're a little bit unsure. They're not 100% sure. They may have moved house, or there might have been some change in their circumstances.
Very simple.
Very simple.
Go to www.checktheregister. That's CheckTheRegister, checktheregister.ie, and they can check whether they're on the register or not.
So that is a system that's open to everybody.
That's open to everybody. In fact, there's an advertisement appearing that has been put out by the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government today, that's appearing in the Irish Independent, Irish Times, Irish Examiner, Irish Daily Star. And it's a supplement to the register forms that are available from your city, county or city and county council, and online at www.checktheregister.ie. Completed forms must be received by the city, county council, etc., on or before Wednesday, the 22nd of January. So that's in those papers. And all that information is there. And by doing that, you can check the register as well to see, are you on it for now, not the one that starts on the 15th of February.
And let's say there's somebody who is not computer literate or would prefer to make a phone call.
They can walk in, they can make a phone call or walk into the city or county council offices which are in Dungarvan and Waterford City.
Okay, so a phone call would be. I know you don't want to be inundated with people ringing you.
Forms.
They'll still have to. Yeah, but just if they wanted to check and they just say, I don't have access to a computer.
They contact city and county hall, the offices. They don't contact here. We don't do the supplement. I'm the returning officer. I do not compile the register of electors. That is the council's responsibility.
That's the council's responsibility.
Yes. It's them you have to go to. There's no point in ringing here.
Okay. So it's not the county registrars.
Correct. Not the returning officer. It's the council.
The council. And that's a very, very clear distinction, because some people...
and it's in the advertisements on the paper. As I said, Irish Times, Irish Independent, Irish Examiner, Daily Star. Today, the government, the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government have put in an advertisement to that extent. And
some people would confuse that word registrar with registration for elections, which is, as you say, it's a different thing altogether.
Well, the advertisement is absolutely clear, crystal clear.
Do you find people can get very upset when it's too late? They find they're not on the register and there's nothing you can do about it. The law is the law.
It is, but that's why the supplement is there, and the supplement closes on the 22nd. That's law. And if you're not on it by then, there's nothing anybody can do for you. That's the law. So the supplement allows people. The 22nd is not that far removed from the 7th.
Yes, next Wednesday. Is there any indication, Mr. Rooney, in terms of the possibility of registering twice, or maybe having a double vote, or trying to cheat the system? What's your thoughts on it?
It's an offence to do so. It's always possible that somebody will cheat, but generally speaking, they are pretty thorough in the council about checking. They're extremely thorough, in fact, about checking in regard to whether people are registered twice. No, it does happen. It does happen, and it's basically an error that has been made in terms of if you're talking about maybe 85,000 names, it's possible that there's a double print of some sort, but it doesn't happen. Let me put it this way: it won't happen on the basis that somebody is trying to outwit them. You won't. They're very, 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 very well clued in on how they do their job, extremely well.
And what happens if somebody dies? Do they automatically come off the register?
Not necessarily. It's up to the next of kin to notify the local authority, but they do keep an eye on the deaths that appear through RIP.ie. They do, and they remove anybody that they're aware of. But there are cases where people sort of have passed on and the council don't know about it, so the name still appears on the register.
What is the expected electorate for Waterford? Are we looking at, as you say...
Again, it's probably in around 85, thereabouts. Now, again, I don't have the final numbers because the supplement is there, etc., and that won't be issued until after next Wednesday, and that could be big, I don't know.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
No problem at all.
Thank you very much, Neil. Some texts and comments coming in still about John Halligan. I'm going to break some news now. Waterford WLR first with the news. Brendan Halligan will not be contesting the general election in Waterford. Brendan Halligan confirmed to me in the last few seconds by text it's a no. There were too many things to consider. Although I was offered significant supports in terms of campaigning and resources, my ongoing commitment to youth work, particularly Children's Group Link, was the deciding factor. Thank you everybody for your words of encouragement and kind words. So breaking news there. Brendan Halligan, John Halligan's brother, will not be running in the general election. Thank you all, everybody, for your contributions to the programme. Texts, comments, phone calls, everything. Emails, Twitter, Facebook. Sorry if we didn't get to everybody. I tried to get through all the texts and comments. A text about the unemployed being given jobs on election day as polling officers. I didn't get to ask Neil about that. As you just heard, a major interview with John Halligan. His brother Brendan has just announced that he will not be running, will not be contesting the general election. So it looks like there won't be a seat, there won't be a Halligan name on the ticket. We'll talk to you tomorrow. There'll be more on that on the news bulletins throughout the day.